Assalamu alaikum guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are finally doing this video and it is with my great pleasure to introduce to you today's guest, Dr. Hani. She was an intern at ATU, and Dr. Hani, if you want to do a little bit of introduction, you may go ahead right now.
Thank you, Amir. My name is Hani Tarek. I graduated from SMC, that's in Medical College, back in March 21, April 21 actually. And that is when I also started my internship at ATU, which just ended like 15 days back. So that's that.
All right. Okay, so you graduated from SMC, and then you decided to do your house job in ATU. Let's begin this video with first talking about the ATU internship. So the number one question, I think you even mentioned about it before we started the video, is people getting confused over the word internship. So what is internship? What's the difference between house job and internship, if there's any? And how would you, if you were to talk about internship in like 2 sentences, how would you describe it?
All right. So I get a lot of messages asking me how to apply for the ATU internship, but they're actually talking about electives. So internship is basic. So ATU internship equates to house job anywhere else in Pakistan. It's the same as house job. ATU calls it internship. In the US, it's called the internship. Your first postgraduate year in the US is referred to as the intern year when you're practicing as a doctor. And the ATU internship is registered as house job in the Pakistan Medical Council. However, when it comes to ATU only, there is a difference between being an intern and a house officer. So just inside ATU, if you're joining within 1 month of your joining, so for example, I was supposed to join on the 1st of April, which I did. So anybody who's joining from the 1st of April to the 30th of April will be an intern, right? They will have all the intern benefits as well. But anybody who joins after that, so for example, there are people who may quit or may drop out for several reasons. There are people who are going abroad and they decide to quit midway. So there are people on the wait list who then replace them. Those people are then called house officers at ATU. Those people, they get their house job certificate, which is the same as anywhere else in Pakistan. It's just the inside ATU things differ. The medical benefits and the other things, they kind of differ a little, but it's the same. House job and internship is the same.
All right.
An internship is not an elective. An elective is something that you do in medical school. While you're in medical school, you go to other hospitals, you rotate under other people. You do not have to take any exams for doing your electives, and electives are not internship. So I get really annoyed when people tell me that they're doing an internship and it turns out to be an elective, and you're like, I am the one who's doing the internship, because internship is way difficult.
Yeah.
So
I think electives are completely different, and I think from what I remember, from what I last checked, electives are now, because of COVID, is on a pause at ATU. So I'm not even sure if they're accepting electives at
so
ATU.
They are at a pause. They haven't really begun. They haven't begun giving the electives yet officially. Unofficially, you can always contact any consultant and ask them if you can rotate with them. But I think because of COVID, everything is at a halt right now.
Okay, now let's now talk about a little bit more in depth about what the internship entails. And from what I gathered, having gone through the website, ATU's website, I know that the internship is 1 year long. I know it includes both surgery and medicine. And I know that the internship is a paid job for both ATU grads and non-ATU grad, that is students applying from Dow and SMC, etc. And the pay is at 50,000 rupees per month. It's all available on the website. Other than that, Dr. Hani, do you have anything else you can add to this with regards to, for example, the seats, and yeah, what the with regards to the internship.
All right. So as you saw on the website, internship is a year long. It is divided into 6 months of surgery internship. The major difference between our internship at AQ and internship at other hospitals is that in other hospitals, you're supposed to do 3 months of general surgery and then 3 months of a subspecialty surgery. And the same with medicine, you're supposed to do 3 months of internal medicine and then 3 months of a medicine specialty.
Okay.
The best thing about AQ internship is you get to do a lot, right? You don't have to stick to three months of, you don't have to stick with like 4 things for the year. So you have 2 months of, so I can tell you my combination. I had medicine and then I had surgery. So I had 2 months of neurosurgery, and I had 2 months of urology, and then I had 2 months of GS, right? And in medicine, I had 1 month of ER, I had 1 month of neurology, I had 2 months of pediatrics and 2 months of internal medicine. So that's like a huge exposure. You get exposed to so many specialties, and I think that is one advantage. I mean, हम लोग advantages पे बाद में आएंगे, I know, but this is the one advantage that AQ has, doing an internship at AQ has over doing it at other places.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, इसके अलावा, so it starts, so the AQ internship needs to start 1st of January. Residency internship, they both would start in the first. COVID happened and all the exams were delayed. Our exams were delayed till March. So the internship started the first. Unlike December this year. So this timeline may vary with every year. Given the COVID situation, they're making new policies every year. They're changing start dates every year according to their convenience and the convenience of the selected interns as well. They have been very in terms of letting interns start when they can. So where was I? So yeah, AQ has been facilitating the interns. As for the timeline, so the timeline begins, usually the application form comes in, the AQ puts out a timeline on its website. So you have to follow the website to see that timeline. So timeline usually aati hai May mein, or it comes in June. And the timeline has all the things. It has the application due date. It has the interview date, the entrance test date, the start of internship date, the result announcement date. So इसमें सारी dates होती हैं, so you have to follow that timeline. It's very helpful, and it usually comes. It usually appears on the AQ website at around May, mid-May, end of May. It comes, right? The application forms usually comes end of June or the start of July. Ours came around the 13th of July. There is an application fee of 5,000 rupees if you apply early. That is from the 13th to the 30th. For example, हमारे time में it was the early bird was from 13th to the 30th of July, right? It can vary according to the new dates. And then if you're applying late, to the late due date, the application fee becomes 9,000 rupees. Yeah, so that, it's better if you apply on
Obviously.
time, right?
That doesn't apply for like the medical student who's applying to AQ. There's no early bird and late bird fees. It's one fees until the deadline.
Yeah. When you're applying as a medical student, right?
No, I was talking about a medical student applying to Al Khan University as a medical student. Like
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I remember that. We only paid 5,000 regardless of the date. I also applied, did not get him. unfortunately. Right. So yeah. And after that, so the application is long. So I suggest that you start early. It takes around a week to fill that application form. It's a
Yeah.
long. So you have to make a profile. On the AQ website, it asks you to make a profile, and then it's like 7 to 8 pages, which you fill like every day.
Mhm.
This so it has, and then it has section. So there's one section of results. All other years result is necessary, but final year results you're not supposed. It's not an obligation, because a lot of students they're not really done with their exams. They're not done with final year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you don't have to like put in your final year result. Final year result, if yeah, become eligible to start your internship. You need to do really good in all other medical years. GPA does matter. Has to be so to be eligible to actually apply to ATU, you should at least have 3 GPA, right?
Okay.
And then of course, if you have a good GPA, your chances of getting in become more, because there are so many candidates. I remember during our time, it was around 1,500 candidates or so, and they take like around. The number of seats really depends upon the number of AQ grads applying, because by the rule of the Pakistani government, every teaching hospital has to secure house job for their own graduates first, and only after they're done with that, if there are any remaining seats, only then they can offer those seats to graduates of other schools. So it makes sense that the number of seats vary according to the number of AQ grads applying.
Yeah.
During our time, they took in like 60 people, non-AQ. And by the way, this whole thing is about this whole guidance session, whatever we call it, is for non-AQ grads, because I really don't know how it works for the AQ grads, right?
I don't even know.
Process.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's quite obvious. I think those who are applying from out of AQ are more because as an AQ grad, I think they will already have seniors, or they will already have the resource to directly apply. So I don't think they would be as lost as someone who might not be applying.
Yeah, but even the AQ grads have to fill out the application form and pay and all. It's just they do not have to take the test and the interview, because they already went through a stringent test when they entered medical school. So AQ exempts them from that entrance exam for the internship, right? And then you have to fill the application form, and once you're done with the results, there is a section on so there's a biodata section, then you have your medical school results, then you have your publications, if you have any. So the whole application, the entrance test, the interview, everything combined is what makes you a candidate for the AQ internship. So a lot of people do not have publications, but if I'm applying and then there's this other girl is applying who does not have publications, for example, so बाकी हमारी सारी चीजें constant हैं, equal interview scores, equal test scores, equal GPAs, then I'd have that advantage because of my publications. So it can be anything, in your application that stands out. And then there's this section which is 1,000 words long. You have to write a statement of purpose or a personal statement, right? So this is where the application becomes, you can't really submit it in a day. You have to think about it. And so the personal statement, you have to write about why AQ, right? And then you have to write about how AQ will benefit from you, and how you will benefit from AQ, in the long run. So that has to be 600 to 1,000 words long, and it's something which also determines your selection into the program, right?
Okay.
And then you have to name 2 referees. The referees can be anybody from your medical school, any professor, anybody you've worked professionally with, anybody you've worked personally with. It can be your A-level, O-level school teacher, maybe a principal, somebody who has worked with you closely, anybody you trust, right?
Yeah.
any mentor, any supervisor,
Who can
anybody.
put in a good word for you, I guess.
Yeah. So, and it is not really have to be from your university. So, for example, I was from SMC, but my referees were from the Khan University because I did my electives there and I had my mentors there. So it can be a mentor from any institute, wherever you've worked, even if they're not from your medical school, right? So that's all about the application. And then you have to pay the fee. You can pay it either online or online. या फिर वो एक bank draft बना कर देते हैं, and you have to have it photocopied. You have to have it printed, and then you have to submit it somewhere at AQ. I paid online, so I do not really remember the bank draft process, but it's fairly easy. They walk you through everything. The steps are written on the website as you go through the application.
If I could summarize a little bit what you were saying, AQ during the month of May approximately will put out a whole schedule of dates, ranging from like when the application will start, when the test will happen, when the interview will happen, and when the actual internship will start. So I think when you applied, it was about the month of May, right? Uske baad you go to website.
I applied in July.
Oh, you applied in July, but the date came out in May.
The timeline came out.
Yeah, the timeline. The correct word for it was timeline. So you go to the website during the month of whatever the timeline says. So you go to the website, you fill out the online application form, pretty straightforward. I think it's very, very similar to what it is when you were applying as a medical student to AKU for the MBBS program. Your personal information, your academic information, your referee, or I think a better word for referee is perhaps letters of recommendations, I guess is what medical like in the MBBS program.
You do not really need letters of recommendation. Just name the referee, and then they'll call if they want to and take in a word about you.
Okay. And uske alawa, you said that we talked about how the internship is 1 year long. It varies. You can do a bunch of different specialties, unlike many other universities. We know that the internship is paid. It is
we can actually हम लोग timeline से ही चलते हैं ना. So once the application is done with, you get an email if they think that your application is good enough and if you're eligible, then they send you an email and they tell you when the test date is, right? Usually the test takes place around August or September. हमसे पहले अगस्त में होता था, हमारे टाइम में it happened in September. This year in 2021 it also happened in September. It used to be 3 hours long, but because of COVID they chopped it down to 2 hours, in which there were like 30 English questions and 70 science questions. And in science you had medicine, majorly surgery. So it was majorly medicine and surgery, and then you had some parts of gynae, obs. You had eye, ENT, and pediatrics, but very, very basic, right? So the test, ये test होता है. I'll talk later about the test, but this is what the basic pattern of the test is, right? And then once you're done with the test, you have to score well. लोग कहते हैं कि AQ का test was so easy, why didn't we get into the interviews? We cannot fail, we know we did not fail. So the AQ test is never about failing. I do not think anybody can fail that test. It is as close to your final year syllabus as it can be, because you're doing medicine and you're doing surgery, and it basically tests your concepts. The top 120 scores are chosen. Now those top 120 scores can lie from 95% to 100%. So even if you have a 94% on the test, you might not make it, right? So the goal in the AQ test is to not just clear the test, it is to actually score well on the test, right? So
it's the same process. Sorry to cut you off there, but it's the same process as if you're applying to the MBBS program as a medical pre-med
Yeah.
student, there's a cutoff
Yeah.
system basically.
Yes, there is absolutely.
Yeah. So if you remember, is there a different cutoff for the English portion and the medicine portion, or are they both cumulatively scored?
No, cumulatively scored.
Okay.
They did not really reveal the scores. They used to, but they stopped during our time. So we do not really know exactly how they, what is the cutoff for English, if it's a cumulative score or not. But we only get to know, we're the top 120 students.
Okay.
They don't even rank us merit-wise on the website. We get to know our merits later when we're actually inducted into the program post-interviews. So that's that, right? Okay. And then once you're selected, you're shortlisted for the interviews. Then the interviews happen around October, and then the results comes around November, mid-November, and they choose in our time they chose 60 people from the 120 people. So those 60 people are inducted into the program. A few more people, like 20 people, are kept on the wait list in case anybody decides to drop out. And then the internship starts anywhere between January to March. That's
depending on COVID.
Depending on COVID. Yeah.
So in your time, it started in April, right? If I'm not
mistaken. 1st of April, yes.
Yeah, 1st of April.
And this year it started 1st of March.
Okay, 1st of March. So hopefully, depending on what the situation is, it usually, you mentioned how it usually starts in January, but hopefully March, so that it should start, hopefully. So that's the timeline of the whole process. It's fairly simple. I'm sure once the timeline is up on the website, everything is going to be pretty straightforward. Everything is there on the website. FAQs on the website.
Yeah.
You can contact AQ directly. You can call AQ directly. You can email AQ directly for any information you might want to know. So let's now talk about the entry test, slightly about the entry test. So you talked about the entry test. You talked about how there are 30, it used to be 3 hours long, but because of COVID, they shorted it down to 2 hours long. There are 30 English questions and 70 science questions. So instead of talking about what type of questions come, let's talk a little bit about what the paper is like. Is it similar to what the paper you took in your 5th year prof exam back in SMC? Was it similar to that, or would you say is there what is AQ entry test like?
All right, so the exam is a very standardized test, right? Okay. It can be solved easily by anybody who has studied for their final year exams. It's basically so in SMC we start medicine in 3rd year, right? We start studying and we start taking exams for medicine from 3rd year. So anybody who's good in medicine, anybody who's done surgery well, is actually able to clear that test very easily. It's the test is pretty similar to what we get at SMC. I'm sure it's pretty similar to what you guys get in AQ in your final year. It's a very conceptual test. So if they say 2 hours, it is lengthy enough to finish on time, right? It's not like you'd get over early. So the exam has a very similar pattern to the USMLE Step 2 CK exam as well. So, a lot of students are now studying, even for their medical school, they're using the videos, they're using boards and beyond, they're using Master the Boards. So I used Master the Boards for my internship exam, and it really helped because any book that builds concepts, right, is a good book for the AQ entrance exam.
All right.
There's this book called Pretest Medicine, Pretest Surgery. The questions of the AQ exam are not similar, but the book really helped me build my concepts because uske questions they're very similar to the Step 2 CK exam. So as long as your concepts are good, you're going to ace the AQ exam very easily. I mean, there's hardly, I do not really remember rote learning anything. People ask me when to start studying. There are people who started studying in February and the exam was in September. I'm not bragging, but 3 weeks are more than enough for the exam.
Yeah.
You just need to, because you're not really studying from the start. The concepts are already there. You've practiced medicine. You've been in the wards. You've given your ward OSCEs. I mean, 3 weeks is also a lot of time. I'm only saying 3 weeks for the sake of saying 3 weeks. I think you just need to go through your books once. That's it, right?
I think if I can add there, I think you mentioned how you start your proper clinics in third year in any medical school, basically. So third year, if you've been consistent with your studies, if you've been passing with decent grades throughout your third and fourth and fifth years, then I'm assuming the AQ entry test won't be that hard, because it's just
Absolutely.
a little bit.
It's not hard.
It's just addition to what you've already been doing the past 3 years. So I don't think it's super different. I don't think it's super impossible for anybody to pass it. People people take it, people pass it, people get in, right? So it's the same with the MBBS entry test. People hype it up so much. They say it's impossible. People study. People if you've been consistent with what you been studying the past few years, it shouldn't be a problem for you. And with regards to that, I highly doubt there is any past papers. AQ's website also says there are no past papers. There's no coaching. There's none of that, right? So it's study yourself, do it yourself, get in yourself. There is no.
Absolutely. There are people who can, you can talk to your seniors. They might recall some of the questions, but in the end, how many questions can one recall, right? So you can always just study. So it's 100 questions long. It's 100 questions long, right? If COVID situation resolves, it might turn back to 150 questions and 3 hours, in which 100 questions are science and 50 questions are English. So this is just a disclaimer that जरूरी नहीं है कि 100 questions आए, पहले की तरह 150 questions भी आ सकते हैं. But again, it's a very basic exam. People ask me how they prepared for English. It's a complete waste of time. Honestly, you do not need to study for English. It's so basic. There are questions on correcting the incorrect sentences. There are questions in which you have to correct the syntax of the sentence, and I mean, you just read the phrase and you know that it's wrong, and you just.
I think if a
answer.
viewer can understand the conversation, if a viewer can understand the conversation we're having, I think it's very doable.
Absolutely.
We're speaking in English, formal English. Yes. It's very doable.
Yes, absolutely. It's very, English is very doable.
Yeah, let's move ahead from the entry test, and let's talk about the pros and cons of the internship at AKU. My question is basically, how is the internship different from doing it at your parent institute? So for example, in your case, it was SMC or the general JPMC, I'm assuming, right? So how is it different from doing it there?
So there are pros and of course there are cons as well. So I speak as a non-AQ grad when I talk about the cons, right? There are very limited interns at AQ, right? AQ only takes 60 interns. So AQ only takes around 100 interns as compared to other places. For example, as compared to big places like JPMC and Civil, they have around 350 interns working, So of course there's more help that is available in each ward. So for example, if I'm rotating in neurology, I am the only intern. I was the only intern in neurology, right? But this concept is completely alien at JPMC. You have to have at least 10 to 15 interns, right? Mm-hmm. There are wards at JPMC where there are 60 interns, and in a single ward. So that's a lot of help that's available, right? So AQ can be really tough for a lot of people, and not for and for all the right reasons. I mean, I think you need tough hours to
succeed in being a good doctor.
Yeah, I mean, residency, AQ internship does prepare you for residency, you know. Secondly, of course, since AQ is such a competitive induction, most of your friends do not make it, right? And then you're alone. While when you're at your parent institute, you're working with your friends. You're more comfortable. From what I hear, working with friends is a completely different experience than working alone, of course. Again, you make absolutely amazing new friends at AQ as well. Internship is you're hardly at home. You're more at AQ than you are at home. During the internship, you guys are sleeping together, you guys are eating together. So of course you do make new relationships, but of course you do miss your old friends. Then thirdly, AQ is a private hospital, right? And people are paying to get the best medical care. So everything that happens, everything that you do happens under supervision, which is a great thing. All right, AQ has a lot of accountability and things need to be done under supervision. But when you go to JPMC, of course, there's a lot less supervision at JPMC. You're made to take harsh decisions. You're made to declare deaths. You do a lot of procedures that you might not be able to do at AQ as an intern, at least unsupervised, right? For example, you can't really intubate a patient as an intern, right? But at JPMC you can. And I'm not completely endorsing what happens at JPMC or other government hospitals because, of course, a patient is not a guinea pig, right? But again, since there's so much hands-on and there's such lack of accountability in other places, you do feel sometimes that you're not really learning, right? But what people do not really realize, AQ mein, there's a lot of passive learning, right? So you don't know that you're learning, but you actually are. And how did I find about this? So if you know Dr. Nuzhat Faruqi, she is the head of urology, I think, at AQ, and she does a lot of medical camps, right? So I volunteered in a medical camp, and I was doing my peds rotation at that time. So I volunteered as a peds doc, right? I saw 150 kids on my own, and that is when, and I had people sitting with me. There were people from other hospitals as well. And the difference in approach to the patient was so visibly different and so visibly better that was the first time I felt at ease. I was like, okay, I have learned a lot during this rotation, right? So for example, you don't really give cough syrup to kids, right? You give other things, but you don't prescribe cough syrup, right? But there are people just prescribing cough syrups left, right, and center, and it is making me so mad because it's not the right practice. So the good thing about AQ is you learn the correct statement of protocols, right? The SOPs of working, and the SOPs of practicing ethical medicine. AQ teaches you that. Even if you do not realize it, you realize it later whenever you're left alone. You realize that you know a lot. So AQ में ये है कि आपको पता नहीं चलता because inside AQ there is just so much supervision that you do not realize how much you've learned, right? AQ के advantages तो बहुत ही हैं, ठीक है? अच्छा, disadvantages की अगर हम बात करें तो again the work hours AQ के जो हैं, so for example in a government hospital, right? If you're on call, your call starts at around 1 p.m. and it ends next day at around 8 a.m. AQ में 8 a.m. पे तो नया दिन start होता है. वो कोई concept ही नहीं है कि वो post call कर होना. So 5 p.m. is the post call time in most departments, except the ones that are ACGMEI certified. So 5 p.m. तक officially you start giving your overs at 5 p.m. then you leave by 6 p.m. So the timings are rough. The timings are a lot. People get really tired. Of course, like I said, the interns are lesser than the interns available at other places. So with such tough timings, again, you're having to do a lot of work as well. So you do get tired, that's for sure. People ask me if they can prepare for their board exams during AQ internship.
Yeah, I was
It's
going
not
there.
impossible. Yeah, so it's not impossible. There are a couple of people who took their USMLE Step 1 during the internship, but they were preparing for the internship, right? So, and I do believe that PLAB can be given. PLAB is a relatively easier exam. Part 1, FCPS Part 1 can be prepared for. There were people last year who did Part 1, who took their Part 1 during their internship. Because last year wale interns ki 15 months ki internship hui thi because of COVID, because we could not join. So they became eligible to give Part 1. But now you're not eligible to give Part 1 unless at least 12 months of internship are complete, right? So they took it during their internship. So you can definitely do that, right?
Okay.
But most people prefer not to because you do get exhausted at AQ. I believe USMLE Step 1 has become pass-fail, so that might be an option. Again, I don't think Step 2 CK would be very... people do leave the internship if they really want to take the exam that year. So there are a lot of people who do leave, only for the sake of taking their exams. So that's that. So that is one disadvantage of AQ, of the AQ internship. It's kind of tough.
Yeah.
The advantages are many.
And I think, advantages, there's really no point talking about advantages, if any. I'm sure like the facilities you get, the mentors you make, like whatever, AQ Med. Even like I was talking to a resident the other day. The resident was talking about how amazing the cafeteria at AQ is. How you just tap your card and you get food. Like, again, I don't know how it depends on person to person. Like,
okay, I think the restaurant is very weird because it's not like you're tapping a card and the money is coming out of the sky. It's
coming
getting
out of your
cut off
salary,
from your
obviously.
salary.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. So,
exactly. Like, and he was talking about how,
you know,
he was a Dow. He was a Dow grad, and he did his internship at Dow. And he was a first-year resident at ENT clinic, and he was my resident. I'm right now rotating in ENT, and he was my resident over there. And he was just we were talking about how nice it was working in ATU, and I think like for him, you know,
so the facilities are awesome.
Facilities are definitely
That's for sure.
cool. Even as a medical student,
and to get paid on time, you know. Unlike other hospitals where you have to protest for getting paid, AQ just pays you like, we got our first pay, we started on the 1st of April and we got our first salary on the 26th of April and we were like, whoa, it's a great feeling. So AQ pays on time.
I can imagine. Like in Iskilawa, even like, I'm sure like as a medical student at AQ and as an intern, I'm sure some of the advantages overlap. One is if you talk about the very, very basics of, for example, one thing that comes to my mind right now is how I see my friends in Dow, I see my friends in every other medical university. Ramzan, they go to clinics, dhoop, there's no AC. It gets very, very exhausting for them. Whereas for me, I can do a morning and afternoon clinic, like 7 hours a day, and I won't sweat one drop, you know, because of how chill it is in AC. Like, which is a very, like, I hate to say it, but like, it's very weird of me to say this, you know. It's a very good advantage to have, you know, at AKU.
I think it's a great advantage. It helps you become more productive. I mean, somebody who's completely exhausted and draining in sweat, they won't be productive when they go home, right? So that's a great thing. But there are also other advantages, you know. There is, apart from getting paid, you have a medical balance. You have a huge medical balance, which you utilize for, if you get sick. So AQ pays, so as an inpatient, AQ pays like 85% of your bill. And then as an outpatient, so you have this outpatient balance. That is, when you go to buy medication, you can get it on your card. right? So I think the medical facilities are amazing. And then there is the advantage of the alumni part, right? So once you graduated, once you're an AQ grad, whether you're a medical student grad or you're an intern grad, you're still, you can still use the library forever, right? AQ library is amazing. I don't think there's a better library. My school library and AQ library, right? My high school library is awesome. And then there's the AQ library. I don't think I have seen such good libraries anywhere else. Plus AQ की library में आपका advantage होता है, a lot of people are studying for the same thing, so you guys can actually bond over that, and then you have access to other things. You have access to the sports center as an AQ intern and as the alumnus, right? You have access to the LRC, so that's one advantage as well, which you do not really get in any other hospitals in Pakistan, right? And then there's this very good advantage of your residency test being exempted. So if you're an intern, you do not have to take the residency entrance test if you want to pursue your residency here. So that residency test is given by literally everyone in Pakistan who is aiming to apply for residency at AQ. So imagine not having to take that test, right? So that is a huge advantage. And then as an intern, you know the system, you know the people, the public relations are excellent. So, your chances of matching, getting into a residency here, of course, they increase because you know the system, you have good public relations. And then AQ is acutely inclined towards research and publications. So even if you've not done any in your own medical school, you come here and you start working on your publications, then you start working on your research portfolio. So your CV just sparkles when, other candidates also come. So the advantages are a lot.
Yeah.
And hence it's a privilege to come here and do your internship, despite getting extremely exhausted.
If I can add over here, I think one advantage some people might undermine is how you talk about the disadvantage of AQ being a very, very tough place to work. The timings might not be too good as compared to any other house job places. But then at the same time, that just molds you to be a better doctor. Even as a medical student at AKU, if I were to ask my counterpart at Dow University and ask them, how many histories have you taken so far in so month of third year? They're going to be like, Shadi, go histories. But then I take probably 10 histories a day, just rotating in ENT with whoever consultant, right? And that makes a big difference. Timings are tough. The procedures are very formal, and the whole formalities are very, very it exists. The formalities exist, but then that just molds you to become a better professional doctor, I think. And I think that's just good, to say the least.
Yeah, and I think so. One of the major advantages at AQ also, is that AQ allows you to practice as a doctor and not as an RN, right? At other places you're supposed to put in cannulae, and you're supposed to make drips, and you're supposed to do a lot of staff work, which does not happen at AQ. Of course, stat labs भिजवानी होती हैं तो वो हम खुद भिजवाते हैं, but you have the phlebotomists at certain times who come and take bloods for you. You have the staff who does all the NGs, staff does all the Foley catheterization. You can always ask if you can always do it yourself if you want. You can get your skills better, but for how long and for how many patients would you do that, right? It's not your job. Your job is to manage the patient, and that's what AQ allows you to do. AQ allows you to manage the patients. And again, like I said, even though the hands-on is less, I have actually had more hands-on at AQ than I had any at JPMC, right? I've even put a lumbar drain. I mean, nobody puts a lumbar drain. So it only depends upon your interest and your how much you volunteer. If you're a person who is not coming forward and not want to do it, you won't get in. But if you're a person who's going to the OR regularly, and who's going to the clinic and who's taking out time to do everything, not just manage patients in the ward. And that's what you learn at AQ also. So a lot of people complain that the hours are tough, the hours are this, the hours are that. I struggled with workload during my first month and my second month, but then you kind of find ways on how to, strategically do everything at a certain way so that you have time to sleep and so that you have time to eat. So AQ helps you helps you make your tasks more manageable. You can't really just function like that for the rest of the year, So so one, you have to manage the hours yourself. Depends upon you. What I used to do is I used to try to finish all my round orders, everything by 10 a.m. And then I would just do whatever I want to do. You do not have to stay in the ward 24/7. You do not have to. There are people who would stay in the ward 24/7, won't really do anything, but they just stay in the ward. You don't have to do that, right? You just complete your work. You then make yourself productive in other areas. For example, work on your research paper, and then come back to the ward when you're paged, right? Yeah. So the staff is pretty active. The staff is looking after the patients. You're not supposed to stand on the patient's head 24/7. You're a doctor. You have to remember that, right? So AQ has that advantage. Even though you do not have help in terms of having a lot of interns, you do have help when it comes to asking your seniors for help, and there's a lot of staff available. And if you have a good relationship with the staff, which I will emphasize on, you have to have a good relationship with the staff, your life would become 100% easier at AQ. AQ made the staff rules, and you have to make sure that you're on good terms with them, right? So
yeah. So
it's a great place to work.
I'm sure. It must be a very cool place to work. Speaking of staff, I know that there are probably in a ward, there are more non-doctors than there are doctors in a ward, right? So it's because, first of all, there's housekeeping, there are those technicians, there are the phlebotomists, there are the resident nurse, there are the head nurse, there are nurses, there are medical students, there are medical nurses, and nursing students, then there are residents, then there are consultants. So there's a huge array of healthcare workers. Now just conclude with the video, and before we conclude, is there anything worth mentioning that you think is super important to talk about? And then secondly, was the experience fun? You spent 1 year at AQ. Was there any regrets, any remorse? How was it? What was, like, if you were to crudely rate it out of 10, what was your experience as an intern like? So let's first talk about
if I were to rate,
anything worth mentioning. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start with rating it. So 7.5 could have been better, Okay. So the one thing that people need to know is wherever they are, be it at the Afan University, be it at other places, your experience depends, one, on you, completely depends upon you. When it comes to hands-on and when it comes to experience in medicine. And second, your experience depends upon the residents you're working with. Mm-hmm. Okay, if your residents are awesome, if they are supportive, if they care about your mental and physical well-being, then you are going to have the time of your life. I had a great time. There were a few wards where I had an amazing time, which includes pediatrics. My resident, he went to England, but my God, he was one of the best people I had worked with, right? And I mean, there is this culture at AQ, especially in surgery, where you have free food. So that was, your residents would just treat you with free food. So anything, any small gesture, you're a young kid, you're broke, you've just started earning, and the residents, just them eating with you, it just makes your day a whole lot better. So your experience definitely depends upon your residents. Kabhi kabar aapko achhe residents nahi milenge, your experience won't be good, and then that will be the time when you learn how to deal with difficult people, which is also a very important experience. You can't just live in a bubble. If you only get like really really good seniors, you're living in a bubble, because that's not how the world functions. The world has a lot of very difficult people to deal with as well, and you deal with them, right? AQ teaches you to deal with difficult people, and AQ teaches you to enjoy the people that enjoy working with you, right? um, so yeah, I mean, I had a great time. I myself like to volunteer for a lot of things, so I did a lot, which I enjoyed. I did a lot of extra clinics. I did a lot of extra ORs. I love the operating room. And the best thing about AQ is if you ask for something, if you ask for an experience, you get it. Nobody says no to you. सही है. ऐसा नहीं है कि आपने कहा कि सर आज मुझे sutures लगाने दें तो कोई आपको मना करेगा. They just let you do it. See, people are nice that way. I had a lot of fun eating food from grill. So AQ has a lot of cafeterias. The main cafeteria I would not prefer. I used to like the grill more. It's a little bit expensive, but once in a while, why not? We used to have subsidized meals at the main cafe. Some of them used to be really nice. So that's that. We had a great convocation. No other hospital in Pakistan does a convocation for their house officers, for their interns. AQ does it, right? Which was an amazing experience. I loved the convocation, and you get to meet amazing people. I mean, you make friends for life, you make mentors for life. Even if you intend to go abroad, there are people who have the experience to facilitate you throughout your life. And I mean, if you're coming to AQ and you're leaving without having at least a research paper or at least a mentor, I think you're wasting your internship. Mm-hmm. So do make sure that you have those. And that's that. One thing I want to mention is if you do not get into the AQ, so AQ internship is awesome, but I am from SMC, right? There are people who can do well anywhere, right? Even if you're at JPMC is also a great place to work. It has the cases that no other hospital sees. Civil has the cases that no other hospital sees. So wherever you're working, it depends upon you how you make out your experience to be, right? And you do not have to feel bad about yourself if you don't get into AQ. It's a tough competition. Anybody can have a bad day during a test. Anybody can have a bad day during the interviews. So do not be very hard on yourself. If you do get in, try to aim for the better merit spots that you get the wards if you're choosing. You get to choose the wards according to merit. And yeah, you'll have an awesome experience here. Everybody rants about exhaustion, and we do that all the time, and not having enough ballrooms, not having enough time to sleep, but everybody knows that there's no better place to work.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, and that's very well said. And I think even like I think the biggest thing I think you can probably relate as well as even as a medical student at AKU, I think the biggest thing I appreciate about AKU is how they appreciate everyone. Like they don't kabhi kabar you're like, yeah, why is this that? Why is this crazy? Why is the timing that? But then at the end of the day, they somewhat appreciate the fact that you're there, you know. I'm a medical student. They can acknowledge my existence, you know. The
acknowledgement that you get at AQ, I have not seen that acknowledgement anywhere. The acknowledgement is immense. The validation. Everybody wants to appreciate you, and it makes you want to do better. And that is something which is very important.
Yeah. So like a consultant who I'm rotating with, they will acknowledge my existence. But I hear from my counterparts at other medical university, एक consultant के साथ
के consultants तो बात भी नहीं करते.
Exactly. So, you know, and there's like 15 people in one CG, and in my case there's 2 or 3 people at max, and I have hands-on interaction with the patient, and I also have hands-on dealing with the consultant. So, the acknowledgement I have as a student, the acknowledgement an intern has as an intern at ATU, there's a whole structure that exists for the betterment of the patients first. And
I think it's the students first, the trainees first. I think the system of mentorship that exists at ATU, उसके अंदर ही acknowledgement का और validation का वो आ जाता है. So which is a great thing about it. You don't really get it at most places.
Agree. So I think on that note, I will end the video, and thank you so much, Dr. Hani, for being part of this video. I really hope whoever is watching, aspiring interns for ATU, do find this video useful. So hopefully they do, and hopefully they appreciate the video. Hopefully. So let's.
I hope everybody gets in. Whoever watches this, I hope you guys get in. I mean, it's an awesome place to work.
If there is a very abrupt cut here and there, that's probably because of the bad Wi-Fi. I will hopefully be able to fix it through edits and through text. But hopefully, it makes sense for everyone. And thank you so much for watching, and make sure you subscribe to the channel.
Thank you, Amir, for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome so much. and thank you so much for being part of it.
No worries at all.
Okay, let me just.
All right.